Good day, I'm Dwayne Matz. Welcome to today's Living Word. We're continuing in the book of Isaiah, chapter 14, beginning at verse 16. Those who see you will gaze at you and consider you, saying, "Is this the man who made the earth tremble, who shook kingdoms, who made the world as a wilderness and destroyed its cities, who did not open the house of his prisoners? All the kings of the nations, all of them sleep in glory, everyone in his own house. But you are cast out of your grave like an abominable branch, like the garment of those who are slain, thrust through with the sword, who go down to the stones of the pit, like a corpse trodden underfoot. You will not be joined with them in burial, because you have destroyed your land and slain your people. The brood of evildoers shall never be named." That's Belshazzar, the unrepentant, idolatrous son of King Nebuchadnezzar. He is likely the target of this prophecy. Whereas King Neb repented after being brought low by God, Belshazzar was defiant to his inglorious end. Greatly feared while he was in power, with a kingdom marked by ruthless cruelty, now his lifeless body would not lie in state, but rather lie like a crumpled body trampled on a street, and passerby saying, "Is this the man who made the earth tremble?" Some state funeral, some fine eulogy, wouldn't you say? What kind of man deserves this treatment? Well, let's pick it up in Daniel chapter 5, the last day of King Belshazzar's life. In verse 1, we read, "Belshazzar, the king, made a great feast for 1,000 of his lords and drank wine in the presence of the 1,000. While he tasted the wine, Belshazzar gave the command to bring the gold and silver vessels which his father, Nebuchadnezzar, had taken from the temple which had been in Jerusalem, that might drink from them. Then they brought the gold vessels that had been taken from the temple of the house of God, which had been in Jerusalem. And the king and his lords, his wives, and his concubines drank from them. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and silver, bronze and iron, wood and stone." In the same hour, the fingers of a man's hand appeared and wrote opposite the lampstand on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Then the king's countenance changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his hips were loosened and his knees knocked against each other. Wow, what words did that finger write on the plastered wall that caused such terror to the king? Well, Daniel was summoned to interpret the writing, and he told the king that God himself had sent the fingers with the message, "Mene, mene, tekel, upharsin." And then he goes on to say in chapter 5:26, this is the interpretation of each word. Meaning, God has numbered your kingdom and finished it. Tekel, you've been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Perez, your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. And then in verse 30, we read, that very night, Belshazzar, king of the Chaldeans, was slain. A chilling end for sure. But unless the Lord tarries, we must all come to an end. Hebrews 9:27 says, "It is appointed for men to die once, but after this, the judgment." Are you ready? How will you fare in the final weigh-in? If you think your good works will outweigh the bad, and that'll be your ticket to heaven, think again. Because the Bible tells us that all our righteousnesses are as filthy rags. They're on one end of the scale. That's it, filthy rags. Isaiah 64:6 says, "We are all like an unclean thing, and all our righteousnesses are like filthy rags. We all fade as a leaf, and our iniquities, like the wind, have taken us away." Now, you may not be as wicked as Belshazzar, but without Christ as your Lord and Savior, you will, like Belshazzar, be weighed in the balances and found wanting. Because only those clothed in the perfect righteousness of Christ, by grace, through faith, will pass the muster. It's why God sent his only Son into the world. Believe that truth. Receive Christ and live. I'm Dwayne Matz, and that's today's Living Word.